Representative Adam Schiff currently serves as ranking member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Representative Schiff was selected in 2008 to serve on the committee and was reappointed as a permanent member in January 2009. The committee oversees the nation's intelligence activities, including the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, DNI, and the National Security Agency, NSA. Representative Schiff gave an interview to CNN in March of 2017. Throughout the interview, he omits information, lies, and purposely undermines the office of the President of the United States. As a member of Congress, your first duty is to protect the people that elected you, then to protect the people of our nation from our government's overreach and abuse, not to subvert and undermine the American public by protecting the deep state.
Congressman Schiff, I want to get your reaction to some new CNN reporting that federal investigators and computer scientists continue to examine whether there was a computer server connection between the Trump organization and a Russian bank, and that's according to sources close to the investigation. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I can only say this. I'm certainly aware of the public reports going back now some months about an alleged connection between Alpha Bank servers and potentially a server affiliated with the Trump campaign. And I can say, what I think the questions we ought to be asking in the committee are. I can't tell you what answers we may or may not be receiving. But I think we need to ask, are these allegations credible? Have the allegations been investigated by authorities? If so, what have they found? Did they reach a conclusion, or is that investigation still ongoing? What leads remain to be tracked down? So these are the kind of questions I think that our committee ought to be asking, but again, I can't go into anything that we are able to find out until the conclusion of the investigation.
In fact, and it wasn't very well reported, the Department of Justice revealed just last week that, in fact, some of these ties that they had witnessed between Trump Tower servers and Russian entities, in fact, were stooged. What that means is that there was malware on some of these computers that were mimicking contact between these entities in what looks like an attempt to put Trump in a tight position, or in fact lead to claims that there was some sort of collusion. So in fact, the more evidence that comes out, the more we're seeing that in fact these claims were either manufactured, or that, like the officials said today, intelligence was released in a partial fashion, and some of that intelligence, as they said on the Hill, was quote unquote dead wrong.
The Alpha Bank issue is just one of many issues that we have been reading about in the open press for some months now. And again, I don't think we want to predetermine where the conclusion will be and what merit any of these allegations have. But if they are credible, then I think it's our responsibility of the committee to determine whether they've been adequately vetted, what we know, and whether there's further investigation that needs to be done.
CNN is also told, and I don't want to be precise about our reporting, that the server issue surfaced again this weekend, mentioned in a Breitbart article that sparked President Trump's series of tweets accusing investigators of tapping his phone, or President Obama of tapping his phone. Does any of that, or if you can say, does any of that align with what you believe the president's motivations were for lashing out at former President Obama?
Anderson, I can only say I have really no idea what caused President Trump to assert that his predecessor was engaged in that kind of criminality. It seems completely divorced from reality, so I have really no idea where this came from, and I think it's pretty clear that that's true of my Republican colleagues as well, and indeed many in the White House. When Sean Spicer doesn't want to talk about it, not even he can spin this kind of specious allegation.
You think that's why the White House is saying, look, we're not going to talk about this anymore, it's going to be investigated by Congress?
Absolutely. I think, they had no way to defend these remarks. They were so incendiary and out of bounds that the best they could do is say, let's give it to the investigative committees and please don't ask us about it anymore. But, as I mentioned before, be careful what you wish for. We're going to have an open hearing now, and this will be one of the topics. We'll be able to ask the director of the FBI very directly if, in fact, he wanted the Justice Department to refute this and they were unwilling. He'll have the opportunity to do it himself.
Yeah, that open hearing is obvious.
Welcome to my chambers. When Donald Trump complained that he was being surveilled, he used the word wiretap by the administration of President Barack Obama, most people in Washington and in the media laughed at him. Nobody took seriously the claim that a sitting president of the United States would be listening to the conversations of a candidate to replace him and ultimately the president-elect to replace him. We now know that President Trump's complaint and claims were true. We know this because President Obama's National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, has acknowledged that she sought and obtained from the National Security Agency, that's America's 60,000-person strong domestic spy force, the people that capture digitally every telephone communication and every keystroke and every computer used by any person in the United States and have been doing it since 2005. Ms. Rice obtained from them transcripts of conversations involving candidate Trump, President-elect Trump, and his colleagues in Trump Tower in New York City. Of what conceivable national security purpose could those transcripts have been? We don't know exactly what transcripts she obtained, and we don't know why she obtained them. But we do know she obtained them, which demonstrates the truthfulness of Donald Trump's claim that Barack Obama was wiretapping him.
Congressman Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Good morning, Congressman Schiff. Let's start with your reaction to reports that Jared Kushner tried to set up a secret back channel with the Russians.
Well, of course, I can't confirm or deny whether they're accurate, but if they are, it's obviously very concerning. And as you said at the top of the show, it's all about the context. John Brennan testified this week that what concerned him wasn't simply that the Russians were having contact with people associated with the Trump campaign, that the Russians have contacts with Americans quite routinely, but it was the context of an election campaign in which the Russians had been intervening to help Donald Trump, to hurt Hillary Clinton. And of course, if these reports are accurate, right after that campaign, after that intervention, to have the president's son-in-law, key player within the Trump organization, trying to establish a back channel with the Russians through a Russian diplomatic facility, you have to ask, well, who are they hiding the conversations from?
Well,
There has never been any proof of collusion or illegal activity between the Trump administration and Russia. The one exception is General Flynn accepting money from the country Turkey and not reporting it to the State Department. Here is an ABC News interview where Representative Schiff alludes to a conspiracy by President Trump and his administration engaging in nefarious activities. Representative Schiff also calls into question H.R. McMaster's loyalties to the country for supporting the subject of the talks with Russia. Not only is this unfounded, there's no tangible evidence to support anything Representative Schiff claims. The Intelligence Oversight Committee has been told that there is no evidence Russia and the Trump Organization colluded to effect anything. The Trump representatives did talk with Russia about Syria and defeating ISIL. Representative Schiff continues to push a lie to subvert the American public and undermining the U.S. intelligence agencies with the intent to impeach the president.
Talking about context. So it would be okay if it was a back channel if all this other context hadn't happened. I know H.R. McMaster, the president's national security advisor, said he was not concerned about back channel communications. Historically, there have been back channels.
You know, I was disappointed to see the general say that. I have a lot of respect for him. Sadly, I think this is an administration that takes in people with good credibility and chews them out and spits out their credibility at the same time. Yes, that's true in the abstract, what General McMaster said.
You're saying he's lost his credibility?
No, but I think that anyone within the Trump orbit is at risk of being used. And what the general said here, that may be true in the context where you're trying to arrange secret talks with the Taliban to negotiate a peaceful resolution, or you're trying to achieve the release of hostages. But for people associated with a campaign, after that campaign has ended, and where the Russians during that campaign were helping you to try to establish a back channel and hide it from your own government, that's
the New York Times and ABC News have both reported that the talks were about Syria, about the crisis in Syria and other policy matters.
Well, that I don't think necessarily mitigates this, because of course, the Russians have their own object in Syria, very different than ours. They want to prop up Bashar al-Assad. Our policy, at least at that time, if these allegations are correct, was very much in opposition to the Russian policy. And if American policy was going to change for the wrong reason, that is, as a thank you to their intervention in the campaign, obviously that's very problematic, just as problematic as it would have been if the conversation was on relief of the sanctions over Ukraine. Now, again, this is all in the category of allegation. But it is something that our committee needs to get to the bottom of, as well as Bob Mueller.
Had your committee, can I ask you, seen any of this type of evidence at all up to this point with Kushner?
I can't confirm or deny what we have seen.
In the hands of wrong people. Guess what they call the use of intelligence data for political purposes? A felony. Welcome to my chambers.